Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. This is part 2 of my story with an emphasis on psyop, right? Not my story playlist, but this is one is emphasizing the psyop. Okay. Point number 9 is what we're on. I just talked about how John called me the N-word when I was younger. On the same ranch in the area, there was a white girl with blonde hair, and it was like in Lodi or Stockton, and I don't want to put these people on blast. I shout out to John. I have no animosity toward him or anything like that. I'm just telling the story, and they may very well have used technology on him to get him to say that, right? Or maybe he was just angry. Little kids say things. It's not that important. It's not like something that, people should be like, well, he's that racist kid from the story, right? It doesn't matter. I don't want people to be that way. Okay. So it's called the Jack Tone Ranch. Now, that's not a coincidence when you look at the situation. They got my father at one point to spend like $10,000 a month on horses, and a lot of the horses and the trainers of his horses were he got from there or from people affiliated with there. And we went there many times, and I was bored out of my mind going there, okay? And, they're nice people, okay? Shout out to them and all that stuff. But we look into the greater context. They're a great example of how you can be the nicest people in the world, right? They're friends of my family. One was my father's patient. Like, these people weren't racist or something, right? And that they could play their part wittingly or otherwise in the New World Order. That quite often is how it is. If you're in a Klan town, maybe some of the white people there are nicer than others, but they all kind of tend to work together historically. And I'm not saying that this particular group of people was aware of how this comes together, but for whatever reason, it was called the Jack Tone. Now think about the fact that they're changing the sound of my voice. Think about they changed my body shape. I am 42, but I've noticed it, and I've recorded it over the years, and you see me having quite funny shapes. They not only changed it in reality, in real life, they changed it in the videos with editing as well, so I look like some kind of clown-shaped, weird, blubbery shaped person at times, and I've proven that definitively with many people conceding my point. And I go out of my way to ask people, and I see that some people concede my point, some people avoid it, and it suggests that they work for the government or something, because why wouldn't you just concede my point? Why go way out of your way to avoid it and gaslight me instead of directly answer my question? When I say, hey, do you notice the difference between this picture and that picture, for instance? No response. When I say, hey, people comment in the comments, no response. But sometimes people will, and I've gathered, dozens of them over the years in the comments, and I have 23 witnesses to the PSYOP on record. Okay, something to that effect. All right. Especially if you include Facebook with the comments. So we go to point number 10. There was boring trips to Monterey when I was younger. Okay, and this all factors in. Think about the greater psychological operation, being a black man in the 80s. In 88, for example, it was 20 years after Martin Luther King was assassinated, right? So I was born like 13 years or so after Martin Luther King was assassinated, around 81. 81, so to not be too specific. Okay, so those boring trips, a lot of people like eating nice food. I didn't so much. I mean, I like it, but I don't want to go all the way to Monterey, like an hour and 20 minutes or however long it would take to get there. It felt like forever, and my dad would say, go change. I come down, throw on something real quickly, don't want to look like a square. He said, go back to your room and change, and it was just a painful process. And my parents and I, we weren't really that close. We didn't really watch movies together. We hardly did. When I was younger, we did a little bit more, but as time went on, we hardly did. Okay, so point number 11. I was punched at a McDonald's in Lodi, okay, by a guy. I remember when he punched me, I didn't feel like his fist so much. I felt his watch rub against my chin or something, There was quite often cases where people, their parents raised them that way, they're from satanic families or something, where if you're going to wrestle someone on the playground, say, okay, let's wrestle. Okay, if you punch somebody, your parents are going to get involved. If you wrestle, you can play it off. And everyone kind of knew that when I was younger. I don't know how kids feel about it now. When I was younger, that was the general rule of thumb. That was the kind of rules of engagement. If you punch somebody, especially if they cry, you're all going to be in trouble. Don't do it, right? It's like a tattletale move. Okay, if you get mad that you're losing and you get up for a second and you say, you sucker punch him, it was basically a sucker punch. And so I was punched 3 times before the age of like 10 years old. Okay, at once at that park in Lodi, twice at Carden School in San Jose. One by a kid named Nico, who's Italian, kind of big, thicker kid, and one by this kind of skinhead-looking young kid who looks like a mix between a Jew and a skinhead, strangely enough.